debates, with Bart Ehrman and yourself. And one thing that Bart always says, and I've always wondered if it's accurate or not, is when he says, we don't have the originals. We don't have the copies of originals. We don't have copies of the copies, the copies of the copies of the copies. And I always wonder if that's just kind of a stretch, or I think you alluded tonight to saying that, the parchment that it was written on in the first century.
Papyrus, not parchment.
Papyrus. Would have disintegrated or something. So my question is, something like John that was written later, how do we know we don't have the copy of the original, or at least a copy of the original, not copies of copies of copies of copies?
Well,
That makes sense.
I think we probably do in a lot of these cases, or at least portions of these Gospels. If you have, let's say Bart Ehrman says in one place in Misquoting Jesus, said, we don't have the originals of 1 Thessalonians anymore, and we don't know why they disappeared. Well, I think we do. They were copied and copied and copied. And so these scribes would have copied that original document and over again. And then the church, I don't think, had a view of relics that the medieval church started to pick up. We've got enough pieces of the cross where we could build Texas Stadium 2 times over, I think. All this relic business was something that Luther condemned. He said, we have Jesus in the Bible, in the New Testament. That's where we need to see him, not get all these silly relics. But these copies that they made, I think the church was far more concerned about getting the good news about Jesus Christ out to people in the Mediterranean world than they were about necessarily getting a perfectly accurate copy. Some of them made more accurate copies, some made less accurate. The translations, they still called that the Word of God. They called it the New Testament. The Quran, the only true Quran, is in Arabic. All translations are interpretations. So there's a different attitude between these two world religions about how they view their sacred texts. So I'd say Craig Evans, that's a name I don't think we've mentioned tonight, but he recently was the featured actor, I guess, if you want to call it that, in a movie called Fragments of Truth. And he argued in an article that he wrote and in this film that the original manuscripts of the New Testament probably lasted for hundreds of years. Now, I'm in the film too, there are a bunch of others are. I don't agree with him on that. I don't think they would have lasted that long, but he was basing it on some ancient Roman libraries where the average classical text might last for 300 or 400 years in these libraries. My point is that the New Testament manuscripts, precisely because these were the manuscripts related to the life of Christians, would be copied. That's their lifeblood. That's the only way they really know about Jesus. So they're going to copy them far more often than if you copy something of Plato or Aristophanes. It's not something that your life depends on. So you're going to get a lot more copies, which means they're going to wear out more often. But that also probably means that the originals would have been copied far more often, not just a single time.